Okay. And so to start off, we're going to do just kind of a quick intro into the ping post, just make sure everyone's on the same page, a level playing field as far as how the system works and, kind of what ping post is in a general sense. And so for any ping post integration, you're going to have your sellers be sending you data to your boberdoo system. So your sellers are your vendors, your lead suppliers, anyone you're buying leads from, affiliates. Those terms are all kind of interchangeable. And sorry, I'm just getting more people into the meeting here as we go. And so that can be done by providing the specs to whoever's going to be sending you leads via ping post. And so very quickly, source vendor settings is where you're going to create those tracking campaigns so you know who's sending you ping post and then what type of setup they're on. Are they dynamic pricing, meaning it could be a different value that you're paying out to them every single time, or static, it's a static flat cost per lead that you're paying them every time. So this example, name 2, every lead that comes in is getting a payout of $12.50. This would be an example of static. And so something newer in the boberdoo system is the ability to generate these specs right from this tab here. So historically, if there's some older clients on the call here, you're probably used to going into settings, clicking lead types, clicking the lead type name. Now you're scrolling down and you're providing them with this spec URL. See here, provide link to the vendor. Now we've kind of streamlined that process. So if you have a vendor attached to a source, there is now a button here to download the PDF. And so that will automatically then grab their API key. You will have to be in secure mode to do this because it does deal with the key values. And so let's go in there real quick. And so what happens is when I click this download link, it will then download the PDF that has exactly what you can provide to the vendor for them to get integrated. It's got the spec, it's got their key, it's got their source, and then some other things depending upon what type of setup they're on, and that's what we're going to get into. But for how this kind of works within your boberdoo system, I've kind of gone into the background here and created a post that's already set up. I've created some partners that are some test ones in here, so we can take a look at kind of the whole flow of what it looks like. And it might be a little bit of a behind the scenes as far as kind of how that is done. And so what I mean by that is I took these posting specs exactly, and I created a ping into the system that we're looking at right now. So this would be like simulating what a vendor would be doing, sending the ping to your boberdoo system. If you click send here, so this boberdoo system returned back matched, saying there is a buyer that's available, and Brett.LeadPortal is willing to pay this vendor that's sending the ping $10 for that lead. And so what does that look like now when it translates to your boberdoo system? If I come to the leads tab, I can filter by pings only at the very top here. This will show me only ones that were just in that ping stage. And you'll see 185, that is the lead ID here. And the price of $10 shows here. And we'll see why that value is grabbed and even used. And so if I click the show lead log, this shows kind of what happened on the ping. And so the lead came through, it said it can match with ID 8. They have a lead price of $10 at their filter set level. This buyer returned back a dynamic bid saying they want to offer $5. This one offered $9, right? And so the system took the highest bidder, $10 in this case, and that's what's returned back to the seller in the ping response, right? So that's like where those values are grabbed for how they're considered, right? It's just whoever is the highest bidder from your boberdoo system is then that value is grabbed and returned back to the seller. If they agreed on this price of $10, they would then agree to post the lead. So here's a step just simulating here of sending the post. 185. So now if I go back to the boberdoo system, back to the leads page, I get rid of the filter for pings only. Now I'm showing the full leads. So this one, when 185 came in, it actually sold for $10. And as we saw with the ping post, that was the value that was grabbed from their filter set and returned back, right? However, most of you are probably asking, well, I don't want to obviously sell the lead for however much I'm buying it for. I want to be able to make some money here. That is where the margin comes through. And so the margin can be set at a couple different places in the system, but let's start with the most common one. The most common, the margins are set at the lead filter set level of the matching partners. So for this example right here, this matching filter set, matching partner, ID 8, if I navigate to their account and I go to their lead filter sets tab and click this quick link. Oops. And so the $10 price, this is exactly where that $10 offer was grabbed from, right? Just exactly what we have in the lead filter set here. And then this is where your margins can come take place at the filter set level to then subtract, instead of returning back $10, you want to subtract maybe a percentage or a flat dollar amount. That could be set here in the filter set level. So if you set a 10% margin here, instead of the vendor seeing $10 as the offer, they would see $9. $10 highest bidder minus the 10% margin that you set. And that final result or final equation results in the value that's returned back to the seller in their response. So the margin is just, in theory, what you're taking out, your piece of the pie, what you're taking as a payout. Other way you can do that is at the source level. And so if we go back to the source that I was submitting under, which was this source A, and we'll look down here and you'll see there's the minimum profit margin. So right now it's 0. So that means that's why it was $10 on all the places. There was nothing being taken out. Same idea. You can do a percent value, which is say 10% like we just did before, or you can do an absolute dollar amount, say $2. And so if I did an absolute value, $2, I save the changes now. Now, when I send this same test, it shows 8. It took the highest bidder of $10. It then subtracted the static margin absolute value of $2. 10 minus 2 results in that $8. So if I want to change this to be 17% and save it, I'm not good at math, so I don't know what this is going to be off my head, but it's going to calculate that exactly of what it will be. So this is to give you an idea of what the margin can do and where you can set it so that you can really control the prices that you're returning back to your vendors. And so if, again, you return this back as your offer, you could return back this and then the vendor could not send the post in because they got offered $8.31 from someone else. They have a similar setup maybe on their end. They're also selling to whoever the highest bidder is. And so you offered $8.30, someone else offered higher than that. They eventually sold that lead to someone else. And so that lead does not appear in your system. And that's kind of the one tricky part with ping post is figuring out, right, what am I winning? What am I not winning? And we'll get in that to the end with some analyzing the data using the reports. But just to know that, just because you return back a successful ping, it does not guarantee that you will, of course, win that lead. So that is the kind of the margin and where it can be set there. All right. And so those values are used turning back and forth. And so now if I go back and I got this 189, submit this lead as the post so we can see what it looks like in your boberdoo system, or in this boberdoo system, I should say. Back to the leads tab. Refresh. So now the most recent lead came through here. And you can see it's sold for $10 because it took that highest bidder still, just like it did before. It was higher than the second one, which was 9, and the third one, which was only 5. But you'll see that the cost is updated automatically to be $830. So you would be paying out to this vendor $830 for this lead, and you would have then sold it for 10, making your margin of 17% for that lead. So then the next step to kind of look at, to kind of go off of what we've looked at here, right? So we have the leads coming through. We have the pings showing up on your leads tab. And let's look at some of the newer features that we've kind of released that kind of can help look into this data and also kind of analyze it as well. So real quick, you might be looking at this page and saying, well, this is not what my page looks like, right? And so first and foremost, we do have a nice little button here, column priority configuration. This is per user. So right now I'm logged in as this username. If someone else on my team was to log in using their username, they would have a completely different view. And it's unique to whatever the user sets on this page here. So if I click this little gear icon, you'll see these are all the different columns that can be enabled or disabled. And then you can also kind of drag and drop them to be in the order that you want. So a common occurrence that I know Scott likes to do from boberdoo is he likes to drag the partners to be all the way to the first column. And then you can scroll down and do reload. And that way, if you have a lot of columns, you don't have to be scrolling all the way to the right to see if the lead successfully sold or not. Again, it's a kind of a unique feature in that it's customizable for each user. So you can set it to be uniquely what you want it to be. So you don't deal with any of the contact information. So you don't care about seeing last name or address or phone or email, right? You just want to see the main points like pricing and all of that. This is where you can kind of control that option. So then kind of in addition to that, we've added these new columns as well to help with clients that are dealing with ping posts to try to get a better visual indicator of what happened with the lead, right? And so like you look at a lead and, a lot can be seen just by looking at this, but mostly you have to kind of click in the lead log and see, all right, well, here's the responses that were returned back. These are the scenario logs, basically boberdoo's logic of why it's picking the highest bidder and what their values are, and so on and so forth. But just kind of looking at a quick glance, you can see then kind of a visual representation, gold, silver, and bronze, highest, second highest, third. Did the person who bid the highest actually get the lead, right? That sometimes can be occurrence where, hey, top bidder is bidding a great number, but then they're rejecting the lead on the post. Maybe it's a duplicate, maybe it's an invalid value, whatever the reason it may be. Without having to click into the log, you can see that it didn't go to the highest bidder just by selecting no or filtering by no here. So if these are not in your system and you want those into your system, if you want to go ahead and just submit a ticket, say you want, I'll put this into the chat here. So this kind of goes through, it doesn't have status here. And so I think, yeah, anything that kind of comes through this page, if there's something that you're missing in your view, just go ahead and make a note here and we can get those added. As I mentioned, they're kind of relatively newer features, right? And so some of these new features get rolled out into our QA systems for testing, and then, kind of slowly roll them out to all clients as time progresses. But we can definitely get those enabled for you if that's something you're looking to have. Again, just kind of a visual representation of what your leads are doing, who they're going to, and so forth. Back to the leads page. And so another nice little feature for filtering and analyzing data is we have a new option for filter templates at the top here. So if you click filter for anything, this will be used if you have something that you're always clicking. You come here every day and you are always selecting this source and a select list of states, and then you're filtering, and that's saying, give me all the leads that match that criteria. Well, these can now be saved as kind of like quick searches then, so that you don't have to select them manually every single time. So I made a couple here as examples, like for example, all leads from a particular source, both pings and posts, pings only for all sources, only posts sold to one specific company. And so if I'm on the main leads tab here with no filter attached, I can then I want to see all the pings. I click that, click load. It does that same idea for me here, as if I clicked here and clicked pings only, clicked all in the system, selected everything else, then clicked filter. So that same idea can be done, and it's really, unlimited access here of what you want to filter by. It's whatever you're going to be selecting in this option. So like I said, did pings all, or if I did want to do all the pings and posts for one particular source, that's just a few clicks as opposed to multiple clicks. Or, leads sold to one company, it will do those quickly for you. So how you can add those is when you're doing the filter and doing whatever you're selecting. I'm going to do this source now, matched pings only from Illinois or California. So now to add it, all you have to do is type in here what you want that name to be. So matched pings name, CANIL. You click here to add it and then click save. That's save it into the dropdown then. So from here, you can just click load to load that, or anything else you want to do for filter by. But again, this will just be another kind of ease of use feature so that you don't have to do as much manually clicking to get something that maybe you're doing on a regular basis. And so just some processes here to help in that. So now we've talked a lot about the leads page. We talked a lot about the source side. All right. Let's look at the partner side. So we look at the partners. These are your buyers, your clients, contractors, whatever it's called in your system, whoever's receiving the leads, right? So every account has to have what's called the lead filter set, as this is going to determine not only what leads they can purchase, but how they get the leads delivered to them, how much they're paying, all of that type of information. So in this example company, they have a custom delivery that they're doing dynamic pricing on. So I kind of labeled all of those options here. And so when you select the lead delivery here, that's how you can, if boberdoo setting up the custom deliveries, we try to name them to be labeled as direct post, ping post, dynamic, static. So that way it's obvious here when you're setting these options inside the filter set. One option, this is for dynamic, as I said. So like when they're dynamic, this filter sets aren't really probably as specific as maybe an agent base that can maybe only handle certain zip codes say, whereas Ping Post, they're saying, hey, send it to me and I'm going to tell you whether I can take it or not. Now, if we compare that to another company where they're a static price of $10, all right, this is their, we can call it their base lead price. We have a newer feature now for what we're calling extra fees that can be applied. And so rather than having to have multiple lead filter sets created for different, say, states, right? You're selling Arizona leads for $10, California leads for $15, Colorado leads for $20. Historically, you'd have to create this filter set and then set the prices appropriately and then make a new filter set with the new prices. This extra fee gives you the wiggle room to flex your lead price based upon the specific criteria of the lead. And so if I said $10 for all leads and it was 15 for California, you could then do 5 as an additional $5 fee for California. Or sorry, I said 20 for California and maybe 15 for Colorado. So 10 here for California, 5 for Colorado. And this reads as, if the lead comes through, sorry, let's do this. Select all. So they get all states, right? If it's from Alabama, the lead price is $10 plus 0 extra fee, so it's just $10. But if it comes from California, it's 10 plus 10, meaning the lead price will be considered $20 for this lead if it's from that state. And that way you can kind of flex these bids up or down. Let's say Delaware is a low state. I want to lower the bid by $1. So if it came from Delaware, the lead price would be $9, 10 minus 1. And so this can be applied to state. This can be applied to zips. It can be applied to any field that you have here. Depending upon the value, you want to either bid up or down. And that can be done using this extra fee option. So again, it's a ease of use function that will allow you to not have to create as many lead filter sets. That's kind of the main point here. Over the years, creating multiple filter sets was really the best way to handle those different pricing points, right? It gave them essentially a new bucket for that to fall into. And so while reporting would be easier with multiple filter sets, just the manual work of creating the filter sets or doing the APIs to create them is additional steps. And so this option for the extra fees will get around that and make sure you don't have to set up the multiple filter sets for different prices. You can kind of plug them all into one global filter set. And then very similarly to the filter set templates, you can save filter sets as global templates. So if maybe you set those with all the pricing structure for all your different 50 states, you don't want to have to do that every single time. So once you do all that, you can check the box for global, all states or whatever you want to name it to be. Now, instead of adding a new filter set from the left here for a health, you would add it from the template, and that would pre-fill all of those options, not making you have to reselect. So those are just some newer features for the filter set side that boberdoo has released, and we think that will help a lot in making the system just a little bit easier for you to use and navigate without having to have so many options toggled back and forth. All right, let's look at now troubleshooting ping posts and test leads. That's a very common thing that comes up. You sign on vendor 123, you send them the posting specs, you gave them the PDF, they're all set. They sent a test lead and they said, hey, here's my test. Did you get it? And you're saying, I have no idea, right? How do I know this? And so let's start let's start with the first thing. Let's start with the test leads tab. So you'll probably hear the word test lead or test lead equals 1. And what we mean by that is in the specs. So when you give these specs to your vendor or to your website developer, whoever's sending leads to you, there's a field labeled in this specs here called test lead equals 1. And you can see here it says only when testing. So what this does is it submits the lead, but it doesn't make it show up on the leads tab. And you might be saying, well, why the heck would it do that, right? And so the reason is if someone's testing, you typically don't want their data to show up in the leads tab with your live leads. Because then when you're doing your filters here or you're doing reporting, right? Those leads are included in those totals. Having the test lead parameter submitted makes it so that the lead is flagged as a test and then is immediately removed from the system. This way, it doesn't fill up your test lead. It doesn't fill up your leads tab with junk data. It doesn't inflate your reporting to have bogus numbers because that wasn't really a lead sale, right? It was a test lead. So that's what this flag is done for. It's just so that lead doesn't show up. So when someone's testing, they say, hey, I sent the test lead. Do you see it? You're probably going to say, no, I don't see it because it's flagged as a test. Where you can go see that is under Tools Logs. There is a specific tab for test leads. All right, so right now there's a test system, no logs found, but this will show you the tests that the vendor would send through if they have that test flag. So this way you can look and see, what they sent, or just to make sure that, it shows up in your system properly, right? I guess that's always the main thing. You want to make sure that you got it. And so kind of something that helps with that is to know what the boberdoo responses are. And that will kind of take it a long way. And so if I scroll down to the bottom of the specs, it will give some examples. So here's the responses, meaning when a vendor sends a lead to your system returns back a response saying either yes, I got it, or no, I didn't. In the simplest terms, I guess you could say that. But the actual responses there are 3 possible ones, and it's matched, unmatched, or error. So status unmatched, status error, or status matched. Matched and unmatched both mean there were typically no errors in the submission. Matched being it actually sold to someone, unmatched just being it didn't sell to anyone or it couldn't match to anyone. But if it's an error, that means the lead did not make it into the system. So if you ever see error, typically that it's going to mean the whole lead was rejected. The only exception is leads that fail manual review, which is like another type of status that the leads can fall into. They return an error back to the vendor saying it's bad, but then it gets thrown into like a holding cell in your boberdoo system. But essentially, just looking at the responses and looking at that status value, looking at just those 3 words, you'll have an idea of what happened with the lead, right? If you see error, you're probably not going to see it. If you see matched or unmatched, it's probably fine. It's just a matter of whether the lead successfully would have sold or not. And so that's kind of what we're going to go into next, but just kind of the idea of the responses being these different options. So if someone sends you a test lead and say, hey, here's what I sent and I got back this response of unmatched, that's just saying, okay, there are no issues with their test, just that you don't have a buyer to set up to take that account. So maybe they don't take that zip code that they sent in the test, or maybe you didn't have someone that was active, or maybe the vendor sent the test lead, at 2:00 in the morning, and you don't have anyone that takes leads during that time. And so those would be an example of it came through fine, it just didn't have anyone to sell to. So how do you get it so that they can test, they being the vendor, and make sure that they get back a success, or what we're calling a matched response here. That is where this little blurb on the specs tab can help. So if I find the specs again, here's the PDF that was given to the vendor. Here's how to test lead submission for these specs. And so this is a little bit of a setup on your side, you being the boberdoo user, right? And that the idea is you want to create a test buyer account with a test lead filter set that can always accept these test leads. So you don't have to be enabling or turning on or off anything. It's just a test account that can accept test leads. You sign on a new vendor, you tell them to do this testing protocol to make sure they can get a matched reply. And it revolves around the idea of like a fake zip code. And so this testing lead submissions is something we may have shared with you in the past, but just kind of a recap of what it is. Going through how you're giving the specs to the vendor, they're using the test lead equals 1 flag. We kind of just went through this. And then here's where we're at right now, adding a test buyer and a test filter set. And so the idea, go back to the account now. I come to partners. Like these are live accounts, right? In theory, right? This John Buyer, they only take leads from certain zips in Wisconsin. This one only takes a handful of zips in Chicago. This one is Wisconsin only still, maybe. These ones are not active. So like if a vendor sent in a test lead from California, most likely they're going to get unmatched. So the idea is to create a new partner. So test for vendors. We're going to do no credit limits. Actually, no, we'll always want to give some type of limits. Give them a fake limit of 100. We're going to create the filter set for phone or for health, I mean. And so if I scroll down here to the zip section, if you were to put this test filter set only accepts leads where the zip is 99999. The idea being, put a fake price in here, and I save it only accepts 99999. So I save that filter set. Sorry, this is just a view. I can ignore that. I'm going to make sure the filter set's active. I'm going to make sure that the account's active. They have the credit limit. The idea being, when you tell your vendors to test, they don't just submit whatever zip code they want. They submit specifically only test with 99999 as the zip code, right? And so let me go back to the page real quick. I'm going to turn off these for now just to give you an idea. If like say the vendor is testing and they're submitting just a regular normal zip code Illinois, they're going to get, oops, I'm in the wrong tab. (90210). They submit this, it's unmatched, right? There's no buyers available that are taking this zip. But as soon as I change it to be this, forcing the zip code to be this fake zip code. Oops, maybe I don't have something set. But the benefit here is like you're giving a specific use case for what the vendor needs to test for. And that way the idea, no real lead will ever come through here with a zip code equals 99999, right? And if it was, you wouldn't want to buy that lead anyway. So having the test account set up to only accept leads from, or from a test zip code will make sure then anyone moving forward that you need to test, like no real additional setup needs to happen. You just say, hey, when you're testing, make sure you use that zip code 99999. That will force a matched response. And that can kind of just help alleviate a lot of the testing issues when you're signing on a vendor, right? And so there's always going to be back and forth. That's, as much as we would love to cut that down completely, it's, this is the nature of technology. Back and forth questions will come up, but to limit and to give more direction from the get-go to the vendor will kind of lead them or steer them down the path of, hey, when you test, you can only use the zip code, and that way you're never going to have any kind of differences in your testing protocols from one vendor to the next vendor that you sign on maybe in a week, right? You would just have to come here and make sure that their new SRC is checked off in the test filter set, which kind of leads me to my next little tool that I want to share. And this is under the kind of jumping back and forth here, but this is back under the source vendor settings for your SRCs. When you add a new source, there's a default option in your system for what should happen. I add a new source called 1111 and add new. Option one is either this source is added into every single lead filter set automatically as checked. So if I would have clicked add new, it would have had 1111 and it would have been checked off here. Or the other system option is it's not checked off and you'd have to come here and manually add it. So that's just a preference that you can have for what you want the default behavior to be for new sources. So depending on what that is, you can use then this. Sorry, let me go back there. A couple of these little tools here. So all these tools in this row, you'll see there's a couple ones that are plus sign and minus signs, one green, one black. Clicking the plus sign that's black here, this will automatically add this source so it's checked off or opted in every single partner lead filter set. Conversely, you can remove that source from every single partner lead filter set. Also, the green one, similar, but it's add this source to only the active partners, or remove the source from the active partners. So those are kind of some bulk options you can do quickly, just quickly add or remove from all. But if you want to have a little bit more wiggle room or customization here, this is where this little hammer or gavel icon can be used. And this will give you a pop-up now where you can, this might make a lot more sense for systems have a lot more lead filter sets. Right now, this only has 4 lead filter sets, right? But if you have 300 filter sets or 100 filter sets here, this is going to be a list of every single one of them with a scroll box down. This page allows you to pick and choose to opt in or check off as an accepted lead source in any of the lead filter sets here. So the top part here is where you can kind of filter by and say, like, show me only the ones that have this label, or show me the only ones that are active, or show me only ones that have certain lead price ranges. And then you can kind of pick and choose. And so, like I said, all it does is you're going to make it so that when you're in the lead filter set pop-up, you're changing these options here. But instead of having to do that individually at the filter set level, you can kind of do it in bulk at the source level here without having to navigate back and forth. So a little tip there for navigating and using your sources or opting in different sources. Instead of having to go back into the filters of the partner section, you can do that there. All right, moving along here. So we've looked at, quick introduction. We looked at some features, testing, kind of how these work. But now we're going to get into probably the harder part, right? Which is, analyzing all this data, right? If you're doing ping post, odds are it's high volume, right? That's kind of the whole thing of ping post. You're able to kind of just ingest everything and then let the system do the work in talking to other systems or grabbing prices or determining who's eligible. But then once you're kind of going through that data, it's a lot there's a lot of questions of what can I be doing differently, or what is wrong, or what's even going on. So the first step is ways to gather this information so that you can look at it. We are always plugging our timed reports, right, as this is the best way to schedule data excuse me, to be sent out from the system, outbound to Google Sheets, Amazon, just a regular FTP server, or if you just want to email, then you're manually ingesting it into some software. These are all things that can be done. And so the admin leads report is kind of always the go-to report for any client. It's where we usually start with. And just because it's a very tangible report, right? It's essentially an export of your leads page, right? So when you're on your leads page, you can see only these columns. You have to click into the lead ID to see the more information. But for every lead, there's this information, plus this information, plus this information, plus where it came from, plus who it's sold to, plus, prices returned and all of that. And so the admin leads report is kind of a one-stop shop to get all of that information into one. So I click just generate real quick. So all the transaction information of every single lead that comes through, cost, how many times it's sold, if refunds are associated with it, where it came from, any labels, and then all of the lead data, all the tracking information, and then ultimately, who it's sold to, how much it's sold for, as we mentioned before. So scheduling this out on a daily basis is usually what we see as the first step. What you're doing with this data after that, that's it's a tough question. There's not one answer. We have clients who, they hire kind of data analytic teams to take this data and, run numbers on it or create pivot tables or whatever they're doing to then kind of figure out CPAs or anything else like that can be used. But getting the data out of the system is usually the first part, right? And so setting up a timed report is always the easiest way. And so email is the easiest way to kind of get it right away. You just put in your email. You have to put in a password to open the zip file. But that will get it out of the system. You can schedule it to send, every day at, 8 a.m. I want to get this file sent to me for yesterday's data. If you're a very heavy system, we have clients that they run this every hour on the hour. And so whatever the last 59 minutes and 59 seconds were is then at that top of the hour pushed out, and then it's repeated 24 times a day. So that's the first one we like to start with, right? That's kind of at base, your lead information, all of the data points, you're getting it out of the system so that you can then use this data to then figure out what it is you want to figure out. Prices, average price based on zip code, for example. Next, another report that's important. Incoming, if you just type in incoming here on your search, you can always mark this as a favorite. And that way your favorites only show up on the right here. But incoming ping post API request. So there's one that's by source, which you can run per lead type. So I ran this for here, would show it all the different sources per lead type. Or if you have lots of lead types in your system, you can do it and it will spit it out, not by source, but by individual lead type. So you want to know how many auto versus health versus home you did. You don't have to run the report 3 times. If I do it by source here, you can just see at a quick glance who is sending what to you. And also how many posts then that's translating to. You may see, or we've seen examples where someone will run this report and it'll show vendor, sent 1 million pings and no post. And right away, that would be red flag number one. Reach out to that vendor. Hey, you've sent 1 million pings and no post. What's going on? And they might say you're not bidding high enough, or they might say we're just getting errors. That's where back and forth communication is always going to come into play, and it's very important for, especially at the beginning of a relationship, to make sure your numbers match up. I don't know how many times we've seen examples where hey, I'm trying to reconcile some billing from last September, and so the farther away you get from those numbers, the harder it comes to finalize those. So everything from the very first day to the first week to the first month, those are like 3 checkpoints I'd say to have after the first day. Hey, so-and-so, I show 28 pings and 1 post. What do you show? Yep, I showed the same thing. Next week, all right, 7 days, I got 150 pings and 10 posts. Oh no, I'm showing something different. And right from there, you can then jump in and see it while it's at a small number and it doesn't snowball, into bigger things. So this report, again, just to kind of show you who is sending you pings and how many those are translating into actual workable posts. Or another, if you have no idea someone's, hey, I want to see if so-and-so's active, this is another easy way to see. You can see if they're actually sending you traffic. A common question might be, while we're still talking about this, under source vendor settings, let's say, I've been getting leads from, this is not real, obviously, right? But this is just a fake vendor, all web leads here. Let's say, after so-and-so, let's say a week or 2 weeks, I'm not happy with this traffic. I'm going to deactivate their source. Okay. If I come back, if they are still sending, so here, we'll do the test like this. So if they sent a ping and they're not active, they're going to get, not allowed for that lead type because they're not active. However, if I run this report again, they still show up in here, right? They're still actively hitting the system, so they show up as a ping, regardless of what their status is. So if someone, I guess the point I'm trying to make is for like boberdoo billing, your monthly fee is based on incoming actions. Just flipping someone to not active doesn't make them stop sending you pings. You have to actually reach out to the vendor and say, hey, stop sending me data, for them to not show up in the report here. So if they are showing up in here, that means they're physically sending leads to your system, or trying to at least. So I know that was maybe a couple of minutes over here. I wanted to really give the last couple of minutes to see any other QA questions we want to have. I have some here that we're going to work through that have been messaged. Thank you, Peter. We'll be covering those right now, but feel free to use the chat if you have any other questions or any other topics you want to cover. So let's start with the first one. Why would I not have available columns in my system? For example, I don't have status. So yes, this status field here, typically this is reserved for agent lead buyers, right? So if you were to log in to the agent Brett account here, agent Brett would be able to change the status. And then this would be so that way, the admin can see what the status would be. If you want to be able to change these on the admin side here, let me know. If just reply yes in the chat right here, and I'll make sure that there's a ticket for that to add that to your system, Peter. And then is there a place to see unmatched test leads? So this has always been something that we haven't had. However, recently we just made a change. Historically, test leads had only been showing up here in the test leads if they actually matched. So if they were sent an unmatched test lead, they would not appear in here. But we have been making updates now. So not only the matches, but also the unmatched ones should now be appearing in this tools logs test leads tab. All right. So if you do not see unmatched test leads in there, just feel free to submit tickets. Hey, I'm not seeing those. We'll make sure that that's options. I know it's something we were kind of rolling out steadily across other systems, so it might just not be enabled as of yet. And just so everyone kind of knows the process of all these, like we do kind of like, intermittent updates kind of through the weeks, but like every other month, we typically have a new, what we call release, where we push all these new buttons or anything that's been created recently. It can be then seen in your new system then. So we got another question here about fake ping price and fake post price. So this is an advanced option where you can use to really you take the bidding into your own hands. All right. And what we mean by that is we kind of looked at the examples before, like when the lead comes through, we're looking at the highest bidder. This one, it was $10 versus $9 versus $5, right? And these values were grabbed from $10 was at the lead filter set level for that account. This next buyer had a custom ping post delivery where they dynamically returned $5. This next buyer had a custom ping post delivery where they dynamically returned $9. And so that's where these values then are used to then determine who the highest bidder is. Okay, so that's at the base level, the idea. And so the fake ping price and fake post price is where you can take that into your own hands to control who you like. Maybe you want John Buyer, even though they're bidding 9, to be above BH, or John 2 Buyer 2's $5 bid. Maybe they are a small buyer that only has a very small subset of zip codes. BH here is a global ping post buyer that takes everything, and they're pretty much always winning the leads over the small guy. And you want the small guy to maybe get a first crack at it. That's where these fake ping values can come into play. So if I go into a partner account, I'm going to deactivate this one. So fake ping price, right now it's just using the $10, right? And so if I were to do an absolute value of $9 or a percent of 10%, same idea here. Their fake ping price would then end up being $9. And so in this case, it would then round robin between the bid would be, the best offer returned would be a round robin between this buyer and this buyer. And then it still always sells for whatever the post, whatever the lead price is, no matter what, that is what's going to be the final price that it sells for. Actually, this is just the fake ping price is used to determine the best bidder, right? Which company, so to speak. fake post price is something a little bit different, right? And this is really only used for if you're selling the lead multiple times and you want to control on the post the order in which those multiple buyers are attempted. So the thing to remember for ping posts is that all pings are done simultaneously in parallel, but all posts are done sequentially. So back to this lead example on the leads page here. So if I look on the lead log, the ping came in, we fired the ping out to all of them. Sorry, let me look at this one that sold multiple times. We fired the ping out simultaneously, 31, 34 for all three of these, right? We then gather in the bids to determine who the highest bidder is, all right? Then it posted to this one. After this one was completed, it then posted to this one, but not until after this one was done. And the issue that can arise with people who have ping post systems or have a buyer's CRM, right? They're posting the lead directly into their CRM. They can reject the lead at that point. So let's use this exact example. Ping came in, all right? We found these three potential buyers. The bid best price return was $19, right? 10 plus 9, right? Was then the cost. There was no margin set. So that's why it's just an exact copy of that. So the cost right now is $19. Let's say that on the post, this $10 one rejected it. They said, nope, sorry, I already have this lead. I don't want it. Well, now there's only one buyer left and you're only going to be able to sell it for $9 and you've already bought it. You've already told the vendor that you'd buy it for 19. And so the fake post price can be used to reorder. And so maybe you want to make sure that the person who's post rejecting is done at the very end, you know? So instead of attempting to BH first, it would have attempted to someone else first. Then that way, you know, depending on the setup, you have that then be post rejected back to the seller, or you know, that's maybe a bad example because it's not covering the cost. But if you have three buyers, right, and so like the sum of the first two will cover it, but not 1 and 3, and so reordering who gets the post first, so that the person who's your trouble buyer is post rejecting, you make them do it first. So that way, if they post reject it right away, you don't even consider the lead. You reject it completely, or you flip it around so that they're the end. And that way you can still try to sell the lead and make some money and not do the post reject back to the vendor, depending on, right, like your relationship with the vendor and you know, what they're, you know, some vendors care a lot about post rejects. Others care about, you know, the ping rejects. So it's really comes down to their kind of setup, but the feature itself at base, you know, is really used to manually interfere. Maybe that's a bad verb for it, but like to, you know, fudge the margins to control who you want to get first crack at the lead, as opposed to letting the system use its normal logic of best bid. It's still using best bid, right? It's just a fake value that's used as the bid instead. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Got another question coming in here for when you're sending. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, when sending test lead equals 1, how do you check to see if a partner with pre-ping is posting properly? If someone sends test lead equals 1, the lead is never sent out to a partner. The test lead equals 1 flags it as a test, so the lead doesn't show up and will never actually attempt to any outbound buyer. So it doesn't matter if they have a HTML email delivery, they have a ping post, they have a pre-ping delivery. Those delivery attempts will never be attempted at all if test lead equals 1's used. So yeah, if you want to be able to test the whole flow, you'd have to test in live mode so that you can see the lead on your leads page, and then you'd be able to click the log to see that the pre-ping was fired. And then kind of while we're on that topic here, these logs, right? This is the ping. You can see ping, right? This is the ping. If it's post, it's going to have that little post before it. So it's a little visual identifier indicator of what step it's at. So it's a lot of stuff to read sometimes, I'm sure. And then if you're wondering what the number is, this is actually the lead filter set that was used to match. And then here's just the actual raw response. And so this is the response. And then you can always click this little button here, and that will give you a pop-up to show you what was sent outbound. So if you wanted to see what was sent in the pre-ping, if it showed the pre-ping log here, you would see what was sent here. This is just a test, obviously, but you would see the data and the URL. So troubleshooting pings and post. If a buyer says, "Hey, what did you send me for that lead?" You can grab that either for the post or the ping or both. Yes, no problem. This is recorded, so we will be pushing this out once it's done processing and everything. But thanks everyone for the time today. I hope it was educational, informative. If there's any other questions you have on this, feel free. I'm just put it help desk. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot over an email with your questions or comments, or obviously tickets as well. But thank you very much. And we'll be doing some more of these in the future. So please be on the lookout for some new invites. Thank you very much and have a great day.